Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. Now this is going to be a talk that I uploaded 2 years ago, and I think I had less than 10,000 subs when I originally uploaded this, so along with some music videos I have been re-uploading, I think there are some history videos that I should re-upload just because a lot of people haven't seen them, and I think this goes over interesting topics. The full 21-minute video I will leave the link to below, but he goes over symbolism coming from Egypt, ancient Ireland, Orion, and I think Orion is important. Here are the 3 stars and the archer here, and that's certainly the way the ancients looked at Orion, at least some of them. Here is the way the stars move over time. Did a culture way back in history actually know this? Well, that is certainly a possibility, but I will leave the full link to this video below. This is about a 6-minute clip. Talks about Egypt, the sky god, symbolism, the boat journey, as above, so below. I just thought this was worth re-uploading. If you want to watch the full video, I will leave the link below. But certainly Gilgamesh, some early leaders of Egypt were seen as sky gods also. They were seen as Orion. And here you see what would have been the left foot raised, and that is certainly the way Gilgamesh, as a sky god here, represented as Orion. Maybe these are the Pleiades right here. But defeating the celestial bull, sky gods, something bad came from the sky. That's the way the early leaders of Egypt, and all the leaders of Egypt were represented as Orion. Now from roughly 5,000 years ago, here is Pharaoh Den, depicted as Orion, the sky god, the rescuer of the sun. Here is obviously Horus. Here are 3 pyramids depicted about 500 years before the Giza pyramids were said to have been built. Here is Pharaoh Den as Orion, defeating the celestial bull in a race. 3 figures here, just like 3 stars above the archer here, Orion. The title of this full lecture is 3 Stones in His Belt, an Ancient Star Myth. Some strange mythology as far as Orion goes, but he was the sky guardian, and we got to think about why that was and why he was rescuer of the sun. But here is that 6-minute clip. It goes over Orion at the end. The full lecture, 21-minute lecture, 3 Stones in His Belt, an Ancient Star Myth, certainly goes over Orion and some stories on it from early mythology. I thought this was worth re-uploading. Hope you thought this was cool, and you all thought I was going to say something else.
For instance, it occurs in Egyptian myth. We have the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut. They're joined together in this kind of union before time, and then they are split apart by the air god Shu, and this creates the world, and from the void in between the sun rises. So this is a male-female pairing representing the earth and the sky and the separation. Nut is also the Milky Way, but also represents the Nile. So there's the water in the heavens and the water is reflected down below, as we heard about earlier. As above, so below. She's also represented as a white cow, known as Mehet Weret, which means the great flood. This is a great flood in heaven and the great flood on earth. And we can see here, this is actually an astronomical image from Temple of Dendra. This is the goddess Hathor, who is a variant of Nut, eating the sun on the horizon at sunset, and then giving birth to the sun on the eastern horizon the next morning. The sun travels through her body at night. And here we can see the same image with the sun as a solar boat travelling through the body of the white cow to be born the next day. So does this occur anywhere in Celtic myth? Here's Mehet Weret, and here's the goddess Nut as she appears on every coffin lid. She's associated with the dead. In Egyptian cosmology, your soul became a star in the afterlife. So you would enter the body of the goddess, which is the Milky Way, in order to be reborn. So this is why she's associated with death. Now, what is the relationship between this and Celtic myth? Well, this is Newgrange in Ireland. Newgrange, as I said, was associated with this figure here. That's actually the Sir Nabbas giant, the image I'm using there. He is mating with a goddess known as Boyne. Boyne means white cow. She forms the River Boyne. It's named after her. There's a great flood which happens after she walks around a well 3 times and she's drowned in the water. So she is the great flood of the water, just as Meheret is in Egyptian. But she's also associated with the Milky Way, as we will see. The Milky Way is called the Bohabafinya, which is the Road of the White Cow. Bruna Boyne is the Irish name for Newgrange, normally translated to palace on the Boyne, but as Boyne means white cow, there's a closer translation. Bru actually means belly or womb, the womb of the white cow. So just as in Egyptian tradition, the coffin represents the womb of the white cow goddess and the Milky Way, so we see that in Irish. And as we know, Newgrange is aligned on the winter solstice sunrise. So the ancient Irish were possibly being born from the womb of a white goddess as a white cow, as were the ancient Egyptians. Now, this connection between the cow goddess and tombs is something that we see throughout the Neolithic world. I won't spend too much on this, but it also goes back to the sort of the long barrows, where it can be argued that there is some sort of cow symbolism in these tombs. We have, for instance, head and hooves burials, where the bodies of the deceased were placed in structures which may have been covered in cow's hides. It's like going inside the body of the goddess. Same here, we still call these entrance parts of these tombs horns. That's our sort of archaeological term. But it goes back to ancient houses, which also were associated with Bucrania back in the sort of Vinča cultures in Serbia in sort of 6000 BC and all the way back to Çatalhöyük. Now, the main myth we have from Indo-European times is the rescue of the sun goddess. Here she's rescued by a couple of twins. This is from Bronze Age Denmark. This is from the Galihus drinking horn, where we see the rescue of the cattle, which also represent the sun, by this figure. And I argue that this figure with the 3 stars above him is possibly related to Orion. Orion is the sun rescuer in a lot of these myths. And this sort of image persists into later mythology. In Greek mythology, Orion carries Kedalion, who is the son of Hephaestus, on his shoulders. And he wanders across the sea trying to get his eyes back. It's the same image as the sun appearing over the shoulder of Orion. We see it in St. Christopher bearing Christ over the waters. It's really to do with the placement of Orion next to the Milky Way and the coincidence of the rising of the sun with the rising of Orion at previous points in time. Depends what time that is. If you think it's the winter solstice, Orion carries the sun on his shoulder at the winter solstice in about 10,500 BC. I'm not going to go too much into those dates. Otherwise, about 6,000 BC, this happens around the time of the equinox, spring equinox. But anyway, Orion is seen as leading the sun out of the underworld, as rescuing the sun.